Welcome to Connect to Success. I'm your host, Ashley Owens, where we talk to the power networkers of the greater Philadelphia, South Jersey, and all over the world now, because we've got Zoom, because Zoom is a thing, and that Zoom's a thing. So I get a chance to talk to everybody about networking. It's kind of the dream job, and I have the pleasure and the privilege of interviewing Miss Gabrielle Leonetti today.
Hello.
Is it Gabrielle? Gabrielle.
Gabrielle.
Okay, great, because I'm just going to keep messing it up until
It's
you tell
okay.
me.
Everybody does it.
Okay, right. It's great. I had someone call me Ashley the other day. I was like, oh, we're just going to roll with that.
Okay. Yeah. No, it's usually Gab. It's a short
Gab?
term.
Can I call you Gab?
Yeah,
All
it's
right, cool. Easy breezy. So again, you and I spoke I think it was a couple months ago, a couple weeks ago. It feels like one big mush into one day.
Yeah.
But we just had a conversation in the break room before we jumped on about all of the things that you're doing. So I know who you are and what you do, what makes you awesome, but can you please tell the audience who you are and what you do? And don't skip on the awesome part. Okay, I know that you're having a problem with it.
It's like, am I awesome? I don't know.
Yeah. Cool.
So I am a sales team marketing coordinator with Wolf Commercial Real Estate. I joined in September of 2020. And previously before that, I was with American Asphalt Company as their marketing director, essentially. I also recently, in COVID, which is surprising, once I left the asphalt industry and moved into real estate, I opened up a small little business called Line Marketing, and I opened that in COVID, which is weird to say.
Explain the decision, because now I'm going to get very excited, because I get a lot of very heavily saturated markets that come onto the show, but you started your own business, so we're going to talk about that. Yeah. I want to hear about, well, first of all, tell me what the decision was to make that transition.
So, going from asphalt to obviously the real estate industry, especially commercial real estate, because it's such a different field than residential. I needed more, I think. I needed something. I love being around salespeople and I love talking with people, and I just needed that transition of being out there more, getting, taking on more projects, more creativity, things like that. And I decided to move over to Wolf. Luckily, they accepted me, and I love them for it.
They're lucky to have you. Let's start using that terminology.
I know. Imposter syndrome.
Yes.
So then I felt bad leaving AAC because I loved them so much. They're like a family to me, and I had talked with Jason Wolf, who is the owner of Wolf Commercial Real Estate, and I had asked him, I was like, look, would you be okay if I did some vendoring on the side for American Asphalt? And he was like, yeah, as long as it doesn't interfere with what you got going on here. And I'm like, okay. So I talked to my accountant, and she was like, well, it's better if you open up a business.
Right.
And that's what I did, and here I am. So I kind of do a little bit of everything.
So I feel like, especially during COVID times, it kind of opened the door up for a lot of different opportunities, right? So it kind of gives you an idea of where you could go, especially now that everybody's working from home and the opportunities involved. So good for you for jumping on that bandwagon.
Yeah.
So what has been the biggest celebration you've had since you started your own business?
The first check.
Right.
It's always the first check. It's always like, you know what, yes. But no, my brother is like a really big supporter of me. He's always asking, because he's in the real estate industry, but on the residential side, and he's very big in South Jersey, but he's always like asking me okay, what can I do with this? What can I do, what can I use with Constant Contact or whatever? And I'm like, okay, well, you could do this or you could do that. And then he implements it, and I'm like, yes, you're listening to me and it's working, So it's kind of like the win is more so just I want to share knowledge. It's not necessarily just the money. It's like I want to share knowledge. I want to help people grow, and the best way to do that is just to be open.
You feel valuable when the things that you're putting in the work is actually working.
Right.
It will work, but it's even better when they put the same practices that you tell them that it will work, and it actually does, because there's always that moment of I hope this works.
Oh, I know, and it's almost like you're throwing spaghetti to the wall to see if it sticks sometimes, especially with marketing. You could have a really great, piece, and you're like, yes, this is awesome, and then everybody else is like, not not so much. You know, so it really is like you kind of have to throw spaghetti against the wall, see what works, see what doesn't, and it's all kind of trial and error, and then you figure it out from there.
Oh, it's so important to recognize that. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs now, especially women too, because we're such people pleasers, and so we're very, 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 very cognizant about like, if you don't like the idea, it's not because you don't like me, it's because the idea isn't at that point, they're not up to par yet with the idea.
Yeah.
So it's like a hard like differentiator to kind of break the mold between that. When I first started my business, I had nothing, meaning like I had an idea that came from going to a networking event, and I had just left my last job, and I had 18 jobs after graduation, so like I didn't right out of control. So and I never got fired. It was always like mergers, acquisitions, and budget cuts. So like I was super jaded against working in general, because I felt like I kept having to prove myself, work through every sick day, all of these things, and I was just like, I don't fit in. Like, I'm doing well, but I don't fit in. And it got to the point where I left the position, went to a networking event, and then actually walked around and asked people what sucks for them about networking. Like, what do you hate? And then I then put services, and then I found my niche just by asking the question. A lot of what marketing, and I'm sure you can attest this, is trial and error. Like, you're trying a bunch of stuff and you're trying to make it work. But it's also coming from a place of, no, I'm very strategic about the tries that I have, rather than just throwing things up against the wall. Because you know what kind of pot it is, you know how hot the pot needs to be, and you know you need to put in salt to make sure it tastes and it becomes al dente. So like all of those things like make sense to make it work. But you know, personally, like tell me about your journey to become an entrepreneur, and tell me about your journey with your son.
So I got married in 2018, and we've been together for 12 years.
Wow.
But we got married in 2018, and shortly after I became pregnant, which was like a very big surprise. And at the time, like I still have custody of my nephew, so I, at the time, had previously taken custody of my nephew, and you know, finding out that I was also having a baby, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like so much, you know? I actually went into, at the time, my manager's office, and I cried, and I'm like, I'm pregnant. And he's like, it's okay. It's okay, you know? It's gonna be all right. And basically, it was a journey. We found out around 22 weeks, I was 22 weeks pregnant. You get your anatomy scan, and then you, they like look at everything, make sure he's got like fingers, toes, everything's good, but they kind of saw like a little something on his heart. So they told me to go to a specialist, which they looked further into it, and we thought, okay, it's just a murmur. Turns out it was a congenital heart defect, which basically there was a hole in the center of his heart, and all the deoxygenated blood and the oxygenated blood were getting mixed together. So the blood that flows into the body, the blood that flows out, like into the heart, was mixing together. It was backing into his lungs. So pretty much what that did, and what that does, is it stops your child from growing, essentially. He was born 8 pounds 6 ounces, and then he ended up losing weight. He was struggling to breathe. He was struggling to eat. He was basically just, eventually he just ended up in congestive heart failure.
Wow.
So at 2 months old, because they wanted him to get his heart surgery at 3 months, and 12 pounds, at 2 months old, he was only 9 pounds.
Wow.
And then he ended up getting his heart surgery. And now he's a thriving 18-month-old boy. So you would never know that, you know, looking at him, his scar, it's like barely there. You'd never know. He's happy as a clam, throws temper tantrums, screams. He's a typical little boy getting in the dirt. And
so throughout all of this, because that's 2018? 18. Whew, 2 years before. 3 years. Wow, it is 3 years before all of this. But like, so tell me how that has taught you, that experience, that trying to overcome everything. How has that taught you to be not only a better, I'm not even going to say better person, because it's not. It's more of like, how has that experience transitioned the way that you think about the world? Because the way that we think about the world now is very different than we did a year ago, and the way that we think about people and how we communicate is very different. So you kind of had that moment of understanding life a lot deeper than a lot of us do. In your own journey, how did you take that experience and put it into what you're doing now?
I think I mean, this isn't the first trial that I've ever been through in
I'm
life,
sure it hasn't,
obviously.
yeah.
But I've had so many people, I think, back us and support us and be there for us, and my friends and my family, especially my mom, just really be there for us through the whole time, be there for my son. And I think having that kindness and that love really helped us get through, because me and my husband, I mean, when we were going through it, we didn't think we were going through it. You know, we didn't know, okay, there's a possibility that he could die after surgery. That's not what we're thinking. We're thinking he's going to get better. And that will and that drive and that we just got through it. And looking back on it, me and him always say, we're like, how did we do this? Like, how did we get through that? I don't know, you know? And I think now, for both of us, truly, is just having that will, you know, seeing that he pushed through, and many babies don't get that opportunity.
Right.
CHD is the #1 killer amongst children.
I didn't know. That's crazy.
There's over 40 different types. There's so many statistics, and it's completely underfunded because nobody really knows what it is or why it's caused. But it's just like, you know, we got to meet with other people. We got to connect with other parents that were going through the same thing. And even now, like, I'm a huge advocate for it. I post about it. If you see me on my social media, you'll see it all over. And the point is to bring awareness. And I've had other parents reach out to me and say, hey, I've got something similar. I've got this going on with my child. And I'm like, listen, I'm all ears.
Yeah.
You know, we are the lucky ones. My son only needed 1 heart surgery. We're lucky because not many people get just 1 surgery. They get multiple surgeries, and it's years, and they don't get to come home from the hospital. So I always say we're the lucky ones, and what happens with that is just the will, the drive, the motivation to keep pushing forward. And no matter what you go through in life, no matter what you are handed, no matter what cards, you have the opportunity to change your life. You wake up every morning and be thankful that you're breathing. You wake up every morning and say, oh my gosh, the sun's out. Today's going to be a good day. Even if I spilled coffee on myself, even if my son ate my dog's vomit, which did happen, by the way, I still wake up and I'm just like, it's going to be a good day. And it's hard to do that. It's not easy. I'm not saying like, oh, you can do this and it's going to be great, but it's definitely difficult. There are some days where I'm just like, oh God, I got to freaking put makeup on. I gotta, you know.
But it looks fabulous.
Yeah, thank you.
So when we return, we're going to talk to Gabrielle about her tactical tips and practical takeaways in networking, or just more about her entrepreneurial journey, because that seems to be the best topic that we could talk about today. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Boardwalks built for fun. Legendary rock and roll clubs.
This is how we do it. Hip hop.
Casinos by the ocean.
Hip hop.
Now that's New Jersey. 130 miles of beautiful beaches. Solid rock. And everything in between.
Look in the window.
Now that's New Jersey. Plan your New Jersey trip at visitnj.org.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Connect to Success. I'm your host, Ashley Owens, where we talk about your tactical tips and practical takeaways in networking, your entrepreneurial journey, and just women in general, because we are amazing and the superior species. So I feel like it's pertinent to this conversation. So your journey was so deep and so meaningful. During the break, I got to introduce you. We had a guest on. Her name was Martha Sharkey, and she runs the organization called Today is a Good Day. And they actually are having something on Friday, so maybe I can get you in touch with that. But what I want to know is, how did this change, and all of the things that you've been through, because I'm sure there are way more than what you're just talking about today. How did that either help you with your, start a business? How did it hinder you with starting a business? And how are you communicating differently?
That's a good question. Those are all very good questions.
Right. Even with just people, because I know that my communication style has changed significantly this past year.
I think I've learned to be more assertive.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah. But there's a fine line of being assertive and, being rude.
Right.
But just learning to get past the nerves, learning to, I haven't really, to be honest, I haven't been able to do some networking lately.
That's fine.
But when I was networking, which was all the time, and that was more so when I was in the asphalt industry, it was one thing that I always like to do is have a drink in hand. And you're not there to say, oh, hi, I'm Gabrielle, and I work for so-and-so, and blah, 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 blah. You're there to make friendships, right? That's how you have to look at it. So you're going in there, you're grabbing a drink, you're starting a conversation, and that's all that you have to do. And if it blossoms with that person, great. And if it doesn't, you move on to the next.
So how have you been able to navigate now talking about yourself? Because you've started your own business, you are working with Wolf, and how are you able to kind of transition between back and forth? Because
yeah, I know that sounds kind of like difficult to do.
Right.
So it's obviously, my business is not like a full-time thing.
Right,
So
right.
A lot of times it's nights and weekends, and I still am able to fit my son in there. My husband actually is like my back-end help creator, so
awesome.
Which is great. I'm like, Rich, I need you to help me do this. Can you think? He's like the brains, right?
Yeah.
And then I kind of just like put it together, which is fantastic. We work very great that way. So he kind of, I would say he's like a part of the whole marketing, the business on that side of it. But, dealing with Wolf is my main job,
Of
my
course.
main like baby.
And they're lucky to have you.
And they, they wanted something fresh. They wanted a little facelift. We just moved our office,
Nice.
and we're going on 9 years. We're going actually on 10 years next year. So trying to really build ourselves in the South Jersey, Pennsylvania area, well, New Jersey really, because we also do North as well. Just trying to build that brand, build it up, make it fresh, make it new, be on top of mind. TOMA is a huge thing, top of mind awareness. And just making sure that you're out there. And transitioning is more so like my business, it's kind of like, hey, if it comes up, I talk to you. I'm not going to throw it in your face because that's just not who I am.
So what advice would you give someone right now, or at least a company that is so heavy, because commercial real estate is very heavily saturated.
yeah.
So what advice would you give, or what is the direction that you really try to go into to make Wolf different? Because it's a very well-known name around this area.
Yeah.
Very, very well-known.
Yeah.
So you guys are doing a great job, but I feel like, especially if someone was going to, if someone was in your position, in a marketing position, they're good at their job, but they are also in a heavily saturated market. What advice would you give on networking for them? And I'm talking about networking in a way like, you said, staying top of mind, right? So when you are networking physically, you are staying top of mind by being in front of that person. Marketing to me is a networking activity.
It is.
It's right? So networking is a marketing activity and vice versa. So tell me more about what that process looks like.
So when you're in a heavily saturated area, the way that you can be top of mind, as you said, is networking, right? You also have salespeople, especially in real estate, it's all sales. And those salespeople, it's as the marketer, or at least for what I do, it's to help them, right? It's to help them grow. It's to get their name out there, and it's to get Wolf out there, right? So it's about networking. It's about making connections. It's about being on LinkedIn. It's about social media. Blasting yourself out there every day, and sharing the projects that you have going on. One of the recent things that I did, we did an ad for, I think it was like one of the chambers of commerce in South Jersey, and it was space available, right? Because NASA's really big right now. So it was a man on a moon holding a Wolf commercial real estate flag instead of the American flag, and it said on the flag, space available. Because a lot of times when you're driving around, you see, property available or, whatever. So I did space available, I made it out there, and we've actually got so many people saying, oh my God, this is incredible. Like, so it's not just, networking and things like that, but it's also making yourself different, right? You want to stand out. So you do that by obviously your personality, your core values as a company. Do you have them? If you don't have them in place, you probably should.
Yeah.
Do you have a mission statement? What is your mission statement? Wolf's is building successful relationships. And that's a huge deal in networking, right? So you want to make sure that you're in front of people and talking with everybody and your friends, your family. That's where you can start if you're really starting a business in general, is letting people know who you are, that you're here. Because marketing in general, like even, as a business owner myself, there's so many different firms, right? You can go with anybody, but you have to have, those things in place. You have to have a core value. You have to have a mission statement. Who are you? Why? What makes you different? Why should I go with you as opposed to somebody else? Well,
Right.
Ours is, teamwork, focus. We want to make sure that you are our focus, and that's where we separate ourselves. Is the client is number one, and no matter what, we're going to make sure that you have the best relationship, that where we connect you with anybody else outside of just selling a property or leasing a property.
Right.
Or it's all about who you know, and making sure that you can get yourself out there, setting yourself apart.
So what advice would you give to yourself
my-
for your own business?
for my
to
own
network?
business?
Yeah.
I know it sounds crazy, but like I know
None of this is crazy. This is not no
Yeah.
crazy show.
But I know a lot of people. I know a lot of people in all different industries. Luckily, I got very lucky that way because I come from a medical background, and then I moved into asphalt, and then moved into real estate. So I have so many people, so many different connections, and really like it's just about talking. It's just about saying, you know what, I do this, and how can I help you?
Yeah.
So if you do have a business, if you are starting up, put yourself out there, because you never know. Talk with your friends and family first. Let them know what you're doing.
What do you think that people in the asphalt and real estate business do wrong in networking?
Ooh.
Ooh.
Calling
people out.
Yeah. So, construction, I think, is very different. It's a different field, and I think a lot of people don't realize that when you're in construction, you have to market yourself, right? You have to put yourself out there, and I think a lot of the guys don't realize, like, I need to be a salesperson. I need to put myself out there. Well, yeah, you do. It's not just up to the marketer to be able to get you leads. You know what I mean? You have to do it yourself as well. So, one thing I will say is American Asphalt was always good with networking. They were, at every show, at every event, doing those things, signing yourself up. You can go on Eventbrite to find things, but it was the one thing that they kind of look back on is like, am I a salesperson? And it's, yes, you are. So I think that kind of is in the construction industry, not just asphalt, but in construction in general, is, they don't leverage the fact that they can use social media. They don't leverage the fact that they can put out there what their recent projects are or what they've completed, that sort of thing.
Where do you think, in your experience, the marketing industry is going? Because the way that people are digesting content, I personally believe, and I would love for you to correct me if I'm wrong here, has been the way that people are digesting content is obviously different, but it has accelerated over the past year for like 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
How can people keep up?
So I think, I hate to be like this, but digital, everything's digital now. Everything's at our fingertips. Everything is, there's not much more room for paper anymore, which paper is still very good. It's still a good thing to do. So I think that having those navigations and I think marketing in general, like you still have to kind of utilize all of it, but definitely put yourself out there through LinkedIn, through social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I mean, you kind of have to, everything's digitalized now.
Yeah.
So putting ads in is great. Making sure, like, if a company was like, hey, can you do an ad for us, or would you like to be a part of an ad, or what have you, asking first if they have a website that you could put your ad on.
Yeah.
Because that will hit more than, just like something via paper. A lot of times people might get something physical, but are they really reading it?
Got it.
Are they really holding it in their hand? So I think that in marketing in general, moving forward, I think we're just becoming more digitalized. I think that more networking, and once obviously COVID is over, doing more face-to-face, I think people are really missing that.
Right.
Zoom is great, but you're not getting that face-to-face true connection. You're not able to feel body language and energy. So I think once COVID is past this point, I think that we'll start getting back to the networking and getting back to all of the normalcy of life.
Yeah.
But I think that marketing is just going to be more digital. I think it's going to really just skyrocket from here, and just once everybody's done sitting in their house,
Right.
it's going to be more face-to-face.
Well, can you do me a favor?
Sure.
We are done, and I hate it because you had such great nuggets. Can you take me through where people can find you? You can look right in that camera.
Okay.
Where people can find you and how they can get involved in just awareness of what you and your family went through.
So you can find me on LinkedIn, Gabrielle Leonetti. You can find me on Instagram. It's Gab Lion Kid with 2 Ds. And basically, if you ever need to reach out to me, email gab.wolf@wolfcre.com. Shoot me an email, and I am always available.
So wonderful having you here.
Thank
Your
you.
story was so impactful, and I think everybody that is going to be watching this is going to understand that in order to create your own thing, it has to come from a lot of, well, the lesson I learned from your conversation has honestly been, you don't know what you can do until you're in it. Mm-hmm. And then when you come out of it, you're like, how the hell did I do that?
Yeah.
And that just
like
shows.
PTSD.
Right. On this therapist session, we'll be talking about our trauma responses and throwing it up on TikTok. Thank you, everybody, for watching. My name is Ashley Owens. I'm your host of Connect to Success, where we talk to the power networkers of the greater Philadelphia, South Jersey area, and all over the world. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to be a guest, please email ashley@ashleysys.com, and we'll have you come on, talk about your tactical tips and practical takeaways in networking, and we will see you next week. Bye.